I had just finished a 24-hour shift, my hands still smelling of disinfectant and the sweat of people I'd helped keep alive. When I got home, all I wanted was to open the fridge for a little milk, but my daughter-in-law leaned in to block me, her eyes colder than an ER at 3 a.m. "Don't open the wrong one. This fridge is mine." She slapped a bright red label right onto my milk carton. "Crystal, do not touch." Behind her, Tyler, the son I raised on cup noodles during night shifts, murmured, "Mom, from now on, please buy your own stuff." I froze. The two people I loved most now spoke to me like I was a stranger. My daughter-in-law turned away, her voice light as ice water on my heart. "Next month, you should find a place that fits your age. We need quiet." The house I bought with countless overnight shifts suddenly felt foreign. I didn't cry, didn't argue. I just felt something drop and shatter inside my chest. I went to my room, locked the door, and opened the safe deed to the house. Savings book, provisional will, all intact. I smiled faintly. They think I'm weak? Fine. In a few weeks she'll be begging me to open that fridge door, and when that day comes, I'll be the only one holding the key to this house. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Marion Blake, 67, an emergency nurse with over 40 years at St. Mary's Hospital in San Antonio, Texas. I've watched people wrestle with life and death and learned to stay calm inside chaos. But I never imagined the worst pain wouldn't come from the ER. It would come from my own kitchen. I used to believe that after my husband died in a construction accident, every sacrifice was worth it. Tyler, the skinny asthmatic boy, grew up and had a family of his own. I just wanted to help them start smooth, share my roof so they could save and build a dream. But now, that very home is where I'm being pushed out. I went to my room, took off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The oak floor still smelled clean, but inside I was ice cold. I pulled out my phone and took photos, the red label on the milk, on the butter, even on an orange in the fridge. "Crystal, do not touch," slanted, messy letters, as if she were marking territory. I saved everything, not for revenge, but because my gut told me I'd need proof. From the kitchen I heard Crystal, "Marion, next time remember to buy your own. People pay for what they use." "No, Mom, no. Mrs. Blake, just Marion, bare and empty, like I was a renter." I answered quietly, "All right." My reply was soft as a breath, but inside, something was shifting, slow, steady, and burning. That night, I sat on my bed remembering 20 years ago, holding feverish Tyler in my arms through a brutal asthma attack, running through rain to borrow money for medicine, living on instant noodles for 3 months to make payments on this little house, the house that now holds both the couple and my humiliation. I used to think my son's happiness was enough. But is a mother's love meant to be trampled like this? Around 8 o'clock, Crystal called from the living room. "Mom, I'm making steak tonight. Oh, and I'm thinking of selling your SUV, okay? The cash can help us go to Miami next month." I stepped out and saw her in the warm light, stirring the pan like she'd said something ordinary. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, went back to the office, locked the door, opened the safe, and checked every paper. The deed was in my name, savings, retirement accounts, provisional will, everything intact. I closed the safe, the metal click like a silent promise. From now on, no one touches what I built. At dinner, Crystal set the table and called Tyler down. I sat quietly, listening to them talk about trips and lavish plans, as if money fell from the sky. Tyler glanced at me and said softly, "Mom, Crystal and I are trying to create some privacy. Maybe you should consider renting. Somewhere quieter and more comfortable for your age." "Privacy?" I repeated, my voice sounding like someone else's. He avoided my eyes and looked to Crystal. She gave a triumphant smile, speared the steak, and chewed slowly, like she'd just wrapped a perfect surgery. After dinner, I washed dishes in silence. Hot water ran over my cracked hands, and I thought about how many times these hands had held the dying and told them, "You're going to be okay." Tonight, I needed those words more than anyone. Night fell. The house went still. I lay listening to the wind against the window. Then a small sound made me open my eyes, the rip of tape. I stepped softly into the hallway and peeked into the kitchen. Crystal was peeling old labels and sticking new ones onto pots, pans, and plates. Each ash-K of tape felt like it sliced my skin. I went back to my room, sat at the desk, and opened a small notebook. On the first page I wrote, "Journal starting today. Everything they say and do, I'll record." Not for revenge, but to protect the truth. I texted Nora Patel, my longtime nurse friend. "Nora, can you swap shifts next week? I need 2 days free for family matters." Nora replied almost at once. "Of course, Marian, are you okay?" I stared at the message, pressed my lips together. Not yet, but soon. Before sleep, I opened the closet and took out one of Tyler's old shirts, the tiny superhero tee I'd saved from when he was 8. I pressed it to my chest. Tears welled but didn't fall. "Son, I've protected you all your life," I whispered. "Maybe it's time I protect myself." The nightlight cast a soft gold on the wall. Outside, the wind hissed through the oaks. I checked the clock. The hour hand had just touched midnight. In that moment, I could see the road I'd take. Silence tonight, reasoned counterattack tomorrow. I spoke to myself like a vow. Silence tonight is the lever for tomorrow. Then I turned off the spancer. Light and lay down, my hands still smelling of disinfectant, my heart heavy. But in the middle of that pain, a small flame flickered, weak but stubborn. If I've survived hundreds of life or death shifts, I'll survive this house. The next morning, Texas sunlight slanted across the kitchen window. I started toward the bathroom to wash my hair and stopped. On the shampoo bottle I'd used for years was a small pink strip of tape, neat marker letters, "Crystal, do not share." I looked at the towel shelf. Paper towels and laundry detergent had the same labels. Even the hand soap pump was wrapped with a note stamped "Owned." Crystal stood in the kitchen, hair in a bun, coffee in hand, smiling thinly. "I just want to avoid confusion, you know. Everyone pays for what they use seems fair." I looked around my house, the sink, the cabinets, the bathroom shelf. Everything felt tagged like a claimed territory. The only thing missing was her name stuck onto the air I was breathing. I didn't respond. I poured a glass of water, drank it down, and went straight out to the yard. Morning light wasn't enough to chase the chill inside me. Tyler sat at the table, sipping coffee from the machine I bought last year. The one Crystal once said was, "For guests only." Now it had a red label stuck to its side. "Crystal, owned." I looked at my son, hoping he'd see something wrong. Tyler just shrugged, detached as if watching clouds. "I think you're overreacting, Mom," he said, sounding tired. "They're just labels. Not a big deal." I set my cup down, the ceramic tapping softly on wood. "Tyler," I asked slowly, "since when do I need permission to use my own things in my own home?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Crystal just wants clarity. You know how she is organized, likes everything neat." I smiled the smile of someone who already sees the crack in the wall. "Organized?" I said. "You're right, but sometimes people label things to own them, not to tidy them." Tyler went quiet. I turned away and said nothing more. At noon, when Crystal left for work, I gathered the kitchen trash to take outside. When I lifted the lid, I froze. Inside was the bag of groceries I'd bought yesterday. Milk, eggs, produce everything unopened, tossed in whole. On the bag, in thick black marker, expired unsafe. I checked the milk. The date was a week out. Lettuce still green, eggs uncracked, not expired, intentionally discarded. I took a deep breath and snapped photos of everything. What I felt wasn't pain anymore, it was cold. Cold like an early morning OR when they prep to cut, except this time, the thing being cut out of a life was me. That afternoon, I took a small USB drive thin as a coin and buried it in the flour jar on the kitchen shelf. It held all my photos, recordings, and receipts, every piece of proof of the labels they'd stuck on my life. I didn't know exactly how I'd use it, but I knew this. If the truth ever got twisted, that USB would speak for me. Toward evening, as I started dinner, Crystal clicked in from the door, her heels crisp on the wood. "Marion," she said loudly, "we need to be clear. Whoever pays decides. You get that, right? I work all day. I can't cover everything." I turned and looked straight at her. "So tell me who's been paying the electric, water, and internet for the last 3 months?" She frowned but kept the sugary tone. "You're forgetting we all live together." I only smiled. Not because it was funny, because I'd heard the confidence of someone who doesn't know where she's standing. After she went upstairs, I opened a drawer and pulled out the stack of bills. Power, water, internet, every one, in the name of Marion Blake. I started counting. Nearly $420 a month, 3 months straight, all from my account. I wrote the totals in my notebook and drew a red line under, "Who's the real payer?" That night, taking trash out, I ran into Mrs. Gutierrez, my next-door neighbor of over 10 years. She was watering her roses, looked up at me with a careful sympathy. "Marion," she said softly, "I don't want to meddle, but I heard Crystal telling someone she's moving you into senior living because it's cleaner and easier to manage." I stood still, my hand tightening on the trash bag. "She actually said that?" She nodded, a little hesitant. "I thought you should know. Young people forget we still have the right to decide." I thanked her, tried to smile, but my chest felt as hollow as the trash bag I'd just dropped. That night I sat by the window, streetlight leaking through the thin curtains. Tyler and Crystal were asleep, but her perfume lingered in the house, cold and cloying, like something fake. I scrolled back to an old message from Nora Patel. "Marion, you should meet my friend attorney Avery Chen. She handles homeowner rights and unlawful occupancy." I typed quickly, "Avery, this is Marion Blake, a friend of Nora Patel's. I need to meet about a matter involving property and homeownership rights." After I hit send, I stared at the screen for a long moment, not because I hesitated, but because I knew the real game was starting now. Near midnight, I turned on the living room light. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock tick. I knelt, pulled back the small rug under the coffee table, and lifted the floorboard section I'd built years ago for important papers. Beneath was a hidden compartment, wrapped tight in plastic. I took every original house deed, insurance, bank books, and put them inside. I left only copies and harmless papers in the safe. I closed the hatch and slid the rug back. The wood's dry click was firm and final. Sitting up, I looked around the room, every corner, every bulb, every item still mine, even if someone else was trying to stick their name on every spoon. I exhaled slowly and whispered to myself, "You want to seize? I'll show you how soft takeover turns into a hard counter." Outside, the night wind rattled the oaks, leaves tapping the window like a warning. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I've lived through 4 decades of ambulance sirens, watched life slip through my fingers, and still stood up. A woman like me, who has handed breath back to so many, won't be shoved out of her own home by a few labels. I turned off the light and walked back to my room, strangely calm. Tomorrow, I'll meet Avery Chen. Tonight, I'll write 1 sentence in my notebook to remember. When someone slaps "do not touch" on my things, they've just touched the last limit of my patience. I closed the notebook, set down the pen, and smiled. Outside, it was still dark, but I knew morning would come, and this time, the light would lean my way. The next morning, the house was pin-drop quiet. Crystal left early. Tyler was still asleep. I took the chance to tidy the living room, a habit I kept, even though no one thanked me for it anymore. Sunlight slipped through the curtains onto the coffee table where Tyler had left his laptop and a mess of papers. I was only going to dust, but when I pulled the drawer, a small catch sound stopped me. Something was jammed. I tilted my head and pulled harder. The drawer slid halfway out, revealing a bundle of papers stuffed in fast. On top was a stack of receipts from hotels, restaurants, and fashion boutiques in Austin and Dallas. The amounts: $620, $980, even $2,300 at a jewelry store. All under the name Tyler Blake, signed by him. My heart pounded. Tyler's pay couldn't cover this. I sat down and carefully sorted each sheet. In the pile, I found a handwritten loan note on yellowing paper with both our signatures. Tyler Blake borrows $35,000 from Marion Blake to open and firefight auto garage. Repayment term: 24 months, starting June 2022. The corner still showed the ballpoint dent from the day I signed, my hand trembling with emotion. I remembered it clearly: Tyler's birthday, his hug, "I'll make you proud, Mom." I'd cashed out part of my retirement early to help him. 2 years later, the garage never opened, and the money never returned. I clenched the paper, then smoothed it flat on the table. Right beneath it, a glossy flyer for a luxury downtown condo with a red circle around: "Deposit once Mom's house is sold." I stared at that line, the room's air thinning. Next to it, a printed text thread. Crystal must have printed it to strategize with Tyler. "Crystal, don't push too hard. Let her feel cramped and then transfer. The more she fights, the more alert she gets." Tyler: "I know, but she seems suspicious. Crystal, leave it to me. An old nurse won't hold a house when no one needs her." I put a hand to my chest to steady my breath. Every word felt like a cold blade. I read them again, hoping I was wrong, but no, my son had planned with his wife how to edge his own mother out of her house. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Noon light bleached everything out. In my head, one small voice: "Don't lose your composure, Marion. Don't let them see you break." I took my phone, photographed every page, every line. Then I put everything back exactly as it was, careful as if I'd never touched it. Before closing the drawer, I saw an unsealed white envelope in the corner. I eased it open: 2 comped dinner for 2 cards to a high-end restaurant. No need to guess who the 2 were. I stood, slid the drawer shut. My hands were cold, but strangely not shaking. The sharp pain in my chest was still there, but it didn't drag me down. It pushed me to stand upright. I walked straight onto the porch and drew a long breath. The oaks out front swayed, leaves whispering, sun dappling. The steps. I remembered the day Tyler moved in with Crystal. They said they wanted to help me feel less lonely, that my house was too big, wasted on one person. I believed them. I opened my door, my heart, and my bank account. And now, the very people I welcomed in want to shut the door on me. Around midday, I called attorney Avery Chen, the one Nora had mentioned. Her voice over the phone was light but firm, the calm of someone familiar with family property fights. "Mrs. Blake," Avery said, "the most important thing now is to stay calm and keep your evidence safe. Don't confront them. Don't say anything that tips them off. I've photographed everything," I said. "Texts, receipts, the loan note. Good. Back it up in multiple places. If you can, send me copies via secure email. We'll meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. in my office." Her voice steadied me. "Avery," I said softly, "they're my son and daughter-in-law. I don't want to destroy their lives." "Mrs. Blake," she paused. "Sometimes protecting yourself isn't revenge, it's stopping people from doing worse. Especially when they're using your trust as a tool." I was quiet a moment. "You're right," I said. "Thank you, Avery. I'll be there." That afternoon, I pulled out my old notebook and opened to the first blank page. On the faint lines, I wrote small but firm, "Soft takeover plan begin." Below it, I listed bullet points. 1. Fridge labels to seize use. 2. Food discarded to make me feel I don't belong. 3. Money personal spending, old debt unpaid. 4. Language Marion instead of mom. 5. Goal pressure me to voluntarily leave. I stared at those lines a long time. Crystal's face flashed in my mind, leaning against the fridge, lipstick dark, eyes contemptuous. Maybe she thinks I'm a frail old woman, easy to steer like a patient to be neatly placed in assisted living. She was wrong. I'm the one who has held on to people's lives, steady-handed and blood-soaked, and still made decisions. If I survive that, I'll survive her little game. That evening, Crystal came home late. I heard her heels on the floor, the light laugh while she called someone. Yeah, next week. He said he'll hold the unit if we close fast. I stood in my room listening and struggling to believe it. That condo, exactly the one from the flyer with the red circle. I didn't confront her. I recorded the call quietly, then set my phone down. As she went upstairs, I pulled the USB from the flower jar, backed up all the new photos and audio, and tucked it back. I heard her laughing with Tyler in their room, the laugh of someone who thinks she's already won. What they didn't know was the real fight hadn't even started. Late that night, I sat on my bed with a mug of mint tea. I looked at my hands, the ones that had held surgical tools, and steadied so many lives now trembling because of my own son. I took a deep breath and smiled slightly. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew I still had strength to push back. I picked up my phone and texted Avery. I have clear evidence. I'll come in tomorrow morning, she replied briefly. Good. Don't let them know you've contacted me. Get some sleep, Mrs. Blake. Tomorrow will be long. I set the phone down and looked around the quiet room. Outside, the night wind gently moved the curtain. I touched my notebook, where the words, "soft takeover plan," were still fresh. My heart still ached, but my hands had stopped shaking. I turned on the small lamp and wrote one last line. Tomorrow morning, meet Avery Chen, 9 a.m. This will be the starting point. I closed the notebook, set it by my pillow, and lay down. The clock ticked steadily. Inside me, nothing felt chaotic anymore, only a steady silence. They think I'm just a gentle old woman, easy to shoo away like an old knick-knack, but they'll soon learn that. Inside me is still a nurse who has fought death and has never lost. I closed my eyes and let the darkness hold me. Tomorrow, everything begins. And this time, I'm the one in control. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Texas sunlight slipped through the curtain, pale as old paper. I made myself a cup of black coffee, drank it in silence, then chose the brown coat my husband used to love, the one thing that steadied me in chaos. Today I would meet Avery Chen, the person Nora said, will help you see your boundaries again. I arrived at the office just before 9 a.m. A small sign read, Avery Chen, attorney at law, property and family rights. No luxury, just a neat room scented with strong coffee and shelves packed with volumes of the Texas statutes. The smell of paper, ink, and coffee blended together, and it felt like stepping into an operating room where you don't save bodies, you save dignity. Avery greeted me with a slight smile. She looked in her early 40s, black hair tied back, silver-rimmed glasses. Her voice was low and clear. Please have a seat, Mrs. Blake. Nora filled me in briefly. Start from the beginning, every detail matters. I took a deep breath and opened the file bag I'd prepared all night. I laid each item on the desk in order. Photos of labels on food, shampoo, the coffee machine, shots of my groceries thrown in the trash. A copy of the loan agreement for $35,000 signed by Tyler. A luxury condo flyer, with deposit once Mom's house is sold circled. A printout of messages between the two of them about making Mom feel cramped so she'll transfer. And finally, a 3-month household cost summary, all paid from my account. Avery stayed quiet while I talked, jotting notes now and then. When I got to the messages, my voice caught, but she didn't interrupt, she just nudged a tissue box toward me. When I finished, she leaned back and laced her fingers. "Mrs. Blake," she said slowly. "Legally, they're occupants at will, staying without a lease or ownership. That means you can terminate their stay at any time, as long as we follow Texas notice requirements." I looked at her, holding on to every word. "So, I can ask them to leave?" Avery nodded. "Completely lawful. And we'll do it by the book. First, a notice to vacate giving the required time to leave. At the same time, we can demand repayment of the $35,000 plus interest and consider emotional distress damages if they escalate." I touched the edge of the desk, feeling blood moving stronger in my veins. For the first time in months, I heard words that made me believe I wasn't powerless. Avery leaned in, softer. "However, I want one more approach, a psychological one. Instead of pushing them straight into a fight, we'll make them see the consequences if they keep going. I can show them the civil and tax risks so they understand that the sell mom's house scheme isn't just unethical, it could be a chargeable offense." I smiled slightly. "You plan to scare them?" Avery answered calmly. "Not scare, Mrs. Blake. Just put the truth in daylight and let them fear themselves." I sat still, listening to each word. Most of my life I've been an observer of patients, people, pain. I knew she was right. Sometimes people don't stop out of kindness. They stop because they fear the cost. After we covered the details, Avery set a pre-printed packet in front of me. "This is the authorization so I can act on your behalf. The file opening fee is $1,500. You can pay now or by transfer." I took out my checkbook, wrote quickly, and signed. When I set the pen down, my hand was steady, a rare feeling since my husband died. Avery watched me for a moment, then said, "I need you to keep all documents confidential. Don't let them suspect you've hired counsel. If they find out, they could move assets or destroy evidence." I nodded. "I understand. I've backed everything up to a USB and sent copies to my friend, Nora Patel." Avery gave a brief smile. "Good. You're a step ahead of me. But please be careful. Cornered people do reckless things." Her voice turned grave. "And remember, never argue alone. If they get heated, leave the room. Let me handle all legal communication." I met her eyes. There was a rare kind of understanding there. I knew it wasn't just professional advice, it was a reminder from one woman to another who'd been underestimated. By the time I left, the sun was overhead. The breeze carried the smell of coffee from a nearby cafe. I stood at the door for a beat and looked up at the pale blue sky. Something in my chest felt lighter, as if half the weight had been lifted. On the way home, I stopped at a small gas station. While the tank filled, I caught my reflection in the mirror, a silver-haired woman with deep lines around her eyes but a gaze clearer than ever. I realized I was getting myself back. I drove slowly through the suburbs, under rows of oak trees. Each house I passed reminded me of little families, dinner laughter, baking smells. My house, the one I used to call a nest, now felt like a quiet battlefield. But this time, I wouldn't walk in like someone being pushed out. I'd walk in as the rightful owner. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Crystal through the window on the phone, her face tight in the sunlight. I couldn't hear her, but from her lips I could guess the familiar words, "Sell the house." I walked in calmly and gave a short greeting. "Good afternoon." She turned, forced a smile. "Where were you?" "I thought you had a morning shift." "I took the day," I said evenly. "Had a few things to handle." She watched me, suspicion flickering. I only smiled and went straight upstairs. In my room, I opened my notebook to a new page. The first line I wrote, "Justice begins with a single word, courage." I sat there for a long time, looking at my handwriting. Outside, traffic hummed far off, but inside, everything was peaceful. It had been a long time since I felt this, not the peace of resignation, but the peace of someone preparing a counterstrike. I sent Nora a short text. "Nora, if anything happens, you're the second keeper of the files, okay?" She replied almost instantly, "Count on it. I'm here, Marion." I set the phone down and leaned back in the chair. The scent of coffee lingered on my coat, reminding me of the morning at Avery's where for the first time in months I felt heard. By late afternoon, the sunset washed the window rose gold. I stepped onto the porch and sat in my husband's old rocker. In the quiet air, I heard wind in the leaves and kids playing ball next door. I sipped tea, warmth spreading slowly through me. Tomorrow, Avery would start drafting the eviction notice. I knew the road wouldn't be easy, but at least I'd taken the first steps on my own feet. No more crying in silence. No more waiting for rescue. I smiled, the first true smile in weeks of humiliation, because I finally understood something simple that took a lifetime to learn. No one protects me better than I do. That evening, rain came out of nowhere. First storm of May speckling the yard, streetlights shimmering on wet concrete. I was about to make tea when I heard a car at the gate. A shiny black SUV stopped at the curb. The doors opened, and I saw Crystal's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hansen, step out, dignified, dressed like they were heading to a board meeting. Crystal followed, arm draped loosely around Tyler's shoulder, voice sweet as syrup. "Mom, my parents want to stop by for a quick talk tonight." I checked the clock, 7:48 p.m. No appointment, no heads up. I only nodded slightly. "All right," I said. "Come in." Mrs. Hansen smiled politely, eyes sweeping the living room like she was inspecting a property to purchase. Mr. Hansen, tall, silver hair cut neat, sat down and spoke right away. "Marion, we're not here to judge. We're here to talk like adults." I poured tea and handed cups around. "I also prefer straightforward conversations," I said evenly. Crystal sat close to Tyler, fingers interlaced, eyes glinting with calculation. I knew she'd prepped a script. "Marion, Mrs. Hansen began, "we know living with young people can be hard, especially across generations. But maybe you should consider a more comfortable option." She paused for a sip, then smiled. "A high-end assisted living community. Nurses, doctors, attentive caregivers. Very good for seniors' health." I kept quiet, looking at each of them. "What about this house?" I asked slowly. Crystal jumped in, like she'd been waiting. "Tyler and I will stay. We can manage it, maintenance, upkeep, keeping things tidy. You won't have to worry about anything, just rest." "Who pays for maintenance, taxes, insurance?" I asked softly, almost a whisper. No one answered. Tyler's eyes slid straight to Crystal. Mrs. Hansen dabbed her forehead with a tissue. Mr. Hansen gave a polite little cough. "Let the kids handle that," Crystal cut in. "You know those costs aren't much. What matters is your peace and having care." I smiled lightly. "Peace?" I repeated. "Yes, I like peace too." I stood to refill the teapot. As I did, I subtly pressed the record button on my smartwatch, the one I wear on shifts. I kept my voice even, deliberately clearer. "So, what you're suggesting is that I move out of this house into assisted living, and you two stay to manage it? Did I hear that right?" The room stalled a beat. Crystal pressed her lips together. "Mrs. Hansen tilted her head, voice sweet as sugar with poison under it. "Marion, no one's forcing you. We only want what's best. At your age, taking care of yourself is the priority." That line kept ringing in my head, colder than the rain outside. Have you ever heard someone say, "It's for your own good," when what they really wanted was something that belongs to you? Share how that felt in the comments. I truly want to know what you think when you hear those words. I nodded, poured everyone more tea, and said slowly, "Thank you. I'll consider it." Those 3 words softened the room. Crystal looked relieved, like she thought I was giving in. Tyler stayed silent, wringing his hands. Each time he seemed about to speak, he stopped every time I looked at him, his eyes dropped. "Mister." Hanson braced his hands on his knees, keeping it courteous. "You know, my daughter only wants to help. She worries you're lonely and tired. Assisted living is modern now. There's a pool, gardens. You'll like it." I smiled. "I'm sure. But the question is, who truly cares about my health?" No one answered. Only the wall clock ticked through the thick air. I looked at each face and saw the cracks forming in their patience. Finally, I stood and set the teapot down gently. "It's late. Thank you for coming by. I'll think about your suggestion." They stood, gathered their bags, still speaking politely. But when Crystal reached the door, I saw her eyes cold, sharp like someone who just placed a chess piece perfectly. When the door closed, the house fell quiet. Only the rain on the porch faded. I walked into the kitchen and looked around. The red labels still clung to pan lids, spice jars, the coffee machine. I stood still for a moment, then raised my hand and peeled them off. 1, 2, 3. Paper tore softly in the hush. I took them all fridge to shelves, erasing every trace of that soft takeover they'd staged. When I pulled the last one from the stainless soup pot, a strange feeling spread through my chest. Not anger, not joy, a return taking back what was already mine. I scooped the labels into a small trash bag, tied it tight, and tossed it out. The rain was still light, the wind cool, but a small, steady flame burned inside me. Back at the table, I picked up my phone. Avery had texted, "Notary has an opening Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I reserved it if you agree." I replied, "I'll be there." And I recorded tonight's conversation. Seconds later, Avery wrote, "Good, don't delete anything. The more they talk, the better for us." I put the phone away and looked around the kitchen again. No more red labels. No more Crystal, do not touch. Everything looked the same, clean, quiet, but felt completely different, reclaimed. The stove clock flicked to 11:59 p.m. The house slept. I walked to the new fridge, the one Crystal called hers, and set my hand on the gleaming door. I opened it, checked each shelf, then turned the tiny key hidden in my sleeve and locked it. The dry little click was soft but enough to make me smile. The closed door reflected me back, a woman once humiliated in her own kitchen, now standing straight, calm, with the key in her hand. I took my notebook and wrote the last line of the day. "They want to talk like adults. Fine. From now on, I'll act like an adult who knows the law, knows boundaries, and knows when to lock the door." I set the pen down and listened to the wind at the window. Down the hall, Tyler shifted in his sleep, and Crystal was probably dreaming of a luxury condo that doesn't exist. They didn't know the game had changed sides. And tonight, the person truly in control was me. I turned off the kitchen light and walked slowly to my room. The rain kept falling, even and gentle. In the dark, I felt the quiet of a first small victory, not over them, but over my own fear. Saturday morning, I'll meet the notary and begin the legal leg of this journey. Tonight, I'll allow myself one luxury I haven't dared in a long time, a good night's sleep. 3 days after the family meeting, Nora called me. Her voice was a mix of urgency and firmness. "Marion, I spoke with a friend, a forensic accountant who used to work for the IRS. Send him the account screenshots you copied from Tyler's computer. He'll review them carefully and keep you anonymous." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep this at a civil level. But the other part, the one that had watched my son change and been humiliated in my own kitchen, knew it was time to learn the truth, however dirty. I sent the files through the secure email Avery set up. 3 days later, the report came back. I opened it and read slowly, line by line. In Tyler's transactions, there were repeating deposits from a source called Sable Consulting Agency, exactly 14 days apart, each for $2,800. The accountant wrote briefly, "This agency does not exist in the tax database, likely a shell entity issuing fake invoices for money laundering or tax evasion. If audited, the recipient is directly liable." I sat still. The room seemed to shrink, the air heavy with my son's guilt. I read it again, hoping my eyes were wrong, but no, the numbers were real, cold, and unforgivable. I leaned back, hands over my face, anger and pity tangled in my throat. I'd sacrificed my life so Tyler wouldn't grow up in scarcity, and now he'd stepped into a dangerous gray zone for ambition. I called Avery. She picked up right away, calm. "Mrs. Blake, I've reviewed the report Nora sent. If accurate, Tyler could be implicated in tax fraud. Penalties can be severe, even criminal if the IRS opens a case." I swallowed. "I don't want my son to go to prison." Avery paused for a few seconds, then spoke gently. "I understand. We won't use this to harm, but to persuade. This will be our strategic lever to show them that if they insist, they risk not only the house, but their freedom." I stayed silent. It took me nearly a full minute. Before I could answer, "Okay, do it your way." That night, I spread every document across the table. Photos, receipts, messages, a copy of the loan agreement, the financial report. Each sheet was a small shard of truth fit together. They formed a picture of greed. I opened my notebook and marked the timeline. February, they started sticking labels, "Crystal, do not touch." March, the food I bought was thrown out. April, Crystal told Tyler to let Mom feel cramped so she'll transfer. May, the Hansen family came to push me into assisted living. Now, the discovery of illegal money flows. I named this file set the Truth Dossier. Dry title maybe, but to me it was an oath. I printed 3 sets, one for me, one for Avery, one for Nora. Each packet was clipped with the list of audio files, photos, and receipts. When the printer stopped, I slipped each set into a plastic folder, labeled by hand, my hands barely trembling, and steadying as I went. Paper wasn't just evidence, it was the line between me and injustice. Night fell, and the house was so quiet I could hear wind seeping through the door jamb. I sat in the living room. The warm lamp threw my shadow long across the wall. Suddenly, an argument erupted upstairs. Crystal's voice was sharp and high. "Don't you get it? I can't live like this forever. If this doesn't get done, I'm gone, Tyler." Tyler sounded worn out, almost pleading. "Crystal, keep it down. Mom can hear us." "So what if she hears? She'll be out of here soon. I'm not waiting." I sat still, listening, my hand resting on my teacup. Every word thudded down to the first floor, one blow after another, but I didn't feel a stab anymore. Just a quiet, clean hurt like a wound that's closed. I remembered when Tyler was little how he'd cling to my legs, begging, "Mom, when I grow up, you'll never have to work again. I'll take care of you." And now he was discussing how to push me out. Life can be cruel enough that your own love becomes a weapon against you. I sighed, stood, and set the cup on the table. No tears, no resentment. Only cold clarity, like a doctor reading a late-stage cancer report. Not curable, only removable. I walked to my office, turned on the computer, and opened the folder titled Notice Day. Avery had already sent the forms for signature notice to vacate and demand for repayment. I read every line carefully, checking each clause. Occupant is present without a rental agreement. Owner may demand vacation of the premises within 30 days. Unpaid debts will be escalated to legal proceedings. I signed at the bottom, saved, and printed hard copies. Each time the pen touched paper, it felt like I was closing a long chapter 1 of endurance. When I finished, I folded the documents into an envelope and sealed it. On the front, in clean handwriting, I wrote, "To Avery Chen, Attorney at Law." I slipped the envelope into my purse along with the copy for Nora. The clock on the wall read 11:48 p.m. I looked up and heard the rain on the porch taper off. The whole city felt hushed. Streetlight glow pooling soft and yellow under the eaves. I checked the kitchen windows, locked the fridge, then stopped and looked around one more time. Everything neat and calm, but I knew it was only the quiet before the storm. Back in my room, I sat on the bed, phone in hand. Nora had texted, "The accountant confirms, if the IRS audits, Tyler could face back taxes and up to triple penalties. But if he stops now, he might avoid the worst." I finished reading and took a deep breath. Not joy, not pain, just regret. I never wanted my child punished. I just wanted him to wake up before it was too late. I set the phone down, opened my small notebook and wrote, "Love isn't the same as blindness. Some children can only be saved by letting them fall." Then I closed the notebook and set my alarm for 6:30 a.m. Tomorrow, notice day. I turned off the light, lay back, and stared at the ceiling in the dark. The clock ticked steadily. With each beat, my fear receded, making room for something else, the cool calm of someone ready. They used to think I was a soft, elderly woman. They don't know that when a mother stops crying, what comes next is action. I closed my eyes. A quiet sleep settled over me, light as mist. Tomorrow, when the alarm rings, I'll rise not with a broken heart, but with one that knows how it will live and who deserves to remain in this home. That morning, the sky was unusually clear. Early sun washed the oak trees out front. A breeze stirred little white blooms along the walk. I'd been up early, brewed a pot of ginger tea, and set it on the kitchen table. The house was so quiet I could hear the living room clock steady as my own heartbeat. At 9:30 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Avery in a gray blazer, files in hand, with a process server beside her. He nodded politely. "Mrs. Marion Blake? We're here to serve legal notice." I drew a slow breath and kept my voice even. "Come in." "I'm ready." As they stepped inside, Crystal appeared on the stairs in a blush silk robe, hair loosely pinned, lotion still on her face. Her eyes flickered at the sight of the two strangers. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound in control. Tyler came behind her in sweats, face drawn, like he hadn't slept. He looked at me, then Avery, confused like someone waking from a bad dream. I seated everyone around the table. Avery opened her case and set down a thick stack of papers, while the process server stood by, clear and firm. At the request of the property owner, Mrs. Marion Blake, I'm here to deliver a notice to vacate. Timeline, 72 hours from this moment. Additionally, this is a demand to repay the $35,000 plus interest, with a claim for emotional distress and property damage. The kitchen froze. Morning light washed across the table and straight into Crystal's widened eyes. She shot to her feet, voice shrill. "What? Betrayal? You're suing us? Did you forget who's been taking care of you all these years?" I met her gaze, steady. "No one has taken care of me, Crystal. I gave you two: a place to live, food, and chances. All three end today." Tyler dropped to his knees, hands braced on his thighs. His voice was hoarse and shaking. "Mom, I'm sorry. Don't do this. I didn't mean. I just wanted you to rest." I looked at my son, the man I once carried when he was sick, the knees I bandaged when he fell off his bike. Now he knelt before me, not out of love but fear of losing a crutch. "Tyler," I said, light but precise, "you've had thousands of chances to tell the truth, to change, to start over. You chose to ignore them all. Don't apologize to me, apologize to yourself." He bowed his head. Tears hit the tile. Crystal slammed her hand on the table. "Enough!" She's bluffing. No court lets you throw family out like this. Avery stood, voice cool and cutting. Under Texas law, a person staying without a lease can be required to vacate within 72 hours if properly noticed. All documents here are notarized, with copies filed at the court. If you or your husband wish to contest this, we'll see you at the Bexar County hearing. Crystal went pale and stepped back. You'll regret doing this to your own son, she hissed. I stood, answering calmly. I've regretted enough, mostly that I didn't do it sooner. 15 minutes later, when Avery and the process server left, the house felt thick with silence. No one spoke. I stood by the counter holding a cold cup of tea and watched Crystal gather her phone, wallet, and any small thing she claimed was hers. Tyler came down the stairs, dazed. Mom, at least give me some time. Cut in. You have 72 hours. And if you're truly sorry, you'll use those 72 hours to sort out your life, not to beg me to withdraw the filing. The front door opened, and, unexpectedly, Crystal's parents walked in. Same polished look, same superior tone. Mr. Hanson spoke first, no greeting. Marion, what is this? Our daughter says you're threatening to throw them out. This is an abuse of power. Mrs. Hanson piled on, voice sharp. Shameful. At your age, dragging a lawyer in just to humiliate your own family. Before I could answer, Avery, who'd just turned out of the driveway, heard the commotion and came back. She stepped inside with a spare copy of the file. Her tone was calm, final. Mr. and Mrs. Hanson, I represent Mrs. Blake. If you intend to countersue, we'll see you in Bexar County Court. For now, please leave the premises. Only the lawful owner decides who may stay. Silence dropped. Mr. Hanson grabbed his wife's hand and pulled her toward the door, face flushed with anger. Crystal rushed after them, crying and saying something I couldn't make out. Tyler remained, staring at me, desperation and shame mixed in his eyes. I said nothing. I turned and walked upstairs. Each step was heavy, but strangely, not shaky. In my room, I shut the door and leaned against the wall. Below me, the noise continued, Crystal crying, Tyler soothing, suitcases thumping, car doors slamming. I closed my eyes and listened like someone replaying the film of her life and knowing the last scene was near. A moment later, quiet settled. Only the first light taps of rain on the window, like the sky wanted to wash the last dirty weeks away. I went back to the kitchen. It was neat. Empty. On the fridge door, one red label remained, Crystal, do not touch, faded, a corner curling. I stared at it for a long time. Then I reached up and peeled it off. The paper tore halfway and clung to my fingertip like it wanted to hold on to. One last shred of ownership. I crumpled it and dropped it in the trash. That was the final label. I opened the fridge. Inside were just some greens, a few water bottles, and a new carton of milk. I poured a glass, added a splash of ginger tea, and inhaled. The scent was warm and soft, nothing like the icy morning weeks ago when I'd been blocked with, "Don't open the wrong one, this fridge is mine." Now, it was mine again, as it always should have been. I sat down, hands around the cup. No more trembling, no more weight, no more bitterness. Only the full quiet of someone who reclaimed what was hers without raising her voice. Before heading upstairs, I wrote a few lines. Notice day 9:30 a.m. They left in tears. I stayed, steady. No one won, only justice was put back where it belongs. I set the pen down and looked around the house. My husband's photo still hung on the wall. The window was open a crack to let the breeze in. I spoke softly, as if to him, "I did it, Frank. Finally, this house is ours again, peaceful, clean, and free." And on the windless noon of notice day, I sat there, sipped ginger tea, listened to the rain on the porch, and knew without doubt the new chapter of my life had begun. Sunday morning, the sky was a dull gray, clouds heavy like a storm warning. I brewed mint tea and set it on the dining table, ready for what I knew would come. At exactly 10 a.m., an engine rumbled at the gate. Through the window, the familiar SUV slid up the drive. 3 figures stepped out first: Crystal in a crisp white dress, her parents behind her, and lastly, Tyler, hands shoved in his pockets, head down. The family committee, I thought, a brief smile tugging at my mouth. I opened the door. Crystal walked straight in without waiting to be asked. "We need to talk," she said, voice firm, like she'd rehearsed this. "All right," I answered lightly. "I have a few things to present, too." I led them to the expeding kitchen. Everything was laid out, a clean table with a thick file sorted by sections, each clearly numbered. On the laptop screen, Avery waited on a video call, serious, steady. Crystal took a seat with her arms crossed. Her parents flanked her like a petty tribunal. Tyler sat apart, gaze unfocused. I opened the file and spoke evenly. "First, thank you for coming. I don't intend to destroy anyone. I only want to clarify the truth, what's happened in this house." I turned the first page, the household cost sheet. For 3 months, all electricity, water, internet, and property tax came out of my personal account, I said, placing the bills in front of them. "Meanwhile, you two," I looked at Crystal and Tyler, "contributed not a single dollar, despite promising to split costs." Crystal smirked. "We were going to pay, just hadn't gotten to it." I smiled back. 3 months, Crystal. I worked in the ICU. I know exactly what not yet means. 3 months is long enough for a patient to heal or for a lie to unravel. I opened the second section, the $35,000 loan agreement, signed by Tyler. "This is the money my son borrowed 2 years ago to open a garage. No payments, no interest, not even an apology." Tyler closed his eyes. I heard a hard breath leave him. Next section, the messages and the luxury condo flyer. The line circled, "Deposit once mom's house is sold." "And this," I said, voice still even, "is proof you two plotted to sell my property while I'm alive." Mrs. Hanson shot to her feet, voice shrill. "Marion, how dare you invade my daughter's privacy? This is a family matter." Avery spoke immediately from the screen, voice like a clean blade. "Ma'am, when someone plans to sell another person's property, it isn't private, it's civil fraud. If reported, authorities can initiate a financial investigation." Mr. Hanson frowned, ready to push back, but Avery continued, calm as if reading statute. "And if we submit evidence of deposits from Sable Consulting Agency, the IRS can get involved. Then every undeclared dollar, every fake invoice, everything gets audited." The room froze. Crystal turned to Tyler and whispered, "How did she find out about that?" Tyler said nothing. Fear filled his eyes. I spoke low and steady. "Tyler, I don't want you in prison, but I won't cover for you anymore. You've gone too far, and if you don't stop, the person who saves you this time won't be me." Tyler dropped his head. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong." His voice shook, a lost child's. Crystal scraped her chair back, the legs screeching across the floor. "Enough. She just wants to humiliate us. All her life she's controlled everything. Now she's using the law to win. You call that fair?" I looked at her, cold. "It's not the law that helps me win. It's the truth that keeps me standing." Crystal barked a hard laugh. "Truth? You're a bossy old woman playing victim." I simply said, softly, "You can say anything you like, but by Tuesday, 5 p.m., this house must be empty." The sentence landed like a judge's gavel. Tyler broke down and Crystal slammed her palm on the table, flinging her wedding ring metal clinking hard on wood. "I'm not staying here another minute." Her parents stood, voices sharp. "We won't let this go. You think people will believe a tyrant old lady over our daughter? We'll take this to social media and show everyone your true face." I didn't answer. I slid my smartwatch from my pocket, tapped a small button. The red light blinked. I said slowly, This conversation is being recorded. Please continue if you'd like more evidence. The room dropped into absolute silence. Mr. Hanson, flustered, tugged his wife toward the door. Crystal glanced around, eyes darting. Tyler stayed in his chair, shoulders shaking. I looked at my son and spoke softly. Tyler, you can go with them, or you can stay, but only if you take responsibility. I'm not covering for anyone anymore. He lifted his head, eyes wet, voice tight. I don't deserve it, but I want to make it right. I nodded without adding more. I know real remorse isn't in promises, it's in what you do after you've lost everything. Avery spoke from the screen, closing out the family meeting. Reminder, you have 72 hours left to vacate the house. After that, the legal filings go to the court. Crystal stood, wiped her tears, but her voice stayed venomous. Just wait. You'll die regretting it in this empty house. I only smiled, light as a breath. No, Crystal, this house was never empty. It was just missing honesty. When the door slammed, an engine roared to life out on the street. I stood still for a few seconds, then exhaled slowly. The air in the house felt lighter, as if even the wind knew who had just left. I turned to the dining table, where the wedding ring Crystal had thrown still lay, catching a weak glint of light. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it, the last symbol of a marriage built on lies. Avery was still on the screen, a small smile on her face. You okay? I'm okay, I answered, my voice low but firm. I haven't felt this calm in a long time. Good work, Marion, Avery said. I'll keep monitoring, and remember, keep the doors locked. Don't forget Tuesday, 5 p.m. I won't forget, I said. I shut the laptop, slid the file into a drawer, and sat at the table. A breeze drifted through the doorway, carrying damp earth and a hint of mint tea. I picked up my phone and texted Avery a short line. Please leave Tyler a way out if he takes responsibility. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the sky was still overcast, but something inside me felt bright in a strange way, not the light of winning, but the light of final peace. The storm was passing, and for the first time in years, I could hear the wind moving through my house, soft, so soft, like a new breath. That night, as the window frame trembled with the breeze, I heard a car roll to a stop in the drive. I peeked through the curtain. Tyler, alone, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes red. He stood at the door for a long time, hand on a small duffel, like he wasn't sure whether to knock or turn away. I opened the door before he could lift his hand. I came to apologize, he said, voice hoarse and dry, like someone who hasn't spoken in days. I stood still. The night was so quiet I could hear the insects in the yard. Where's Crystal? I asked. He looked down. She left, took my savings, left a few ugly words. He held out his phone. On the screen was Crystal's message before she vanished. I'm not living with a coward who kneels to his mommy. Stay there and suck up that old air. I glanced and pushed the phone back. Don't show me anything that makes your heart heavier. Tyler sniffed, trying to swallow a sob. I've got nothing left, Mom. But I want to start over. I know I was wrong. I need you to give me 7 days. Just 7 days to clear my head, find a job, quit drinking, then I'll go. I'll pay room money, pay back every dollar. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking to fix it. I looked at my son, the man I once carried through fevers, standing in front of me like a lost boy. In the warm porch light, I saw his hands shaking. Part fear, part alcohol withdrawal. Come in, I said slowly. But this time, I have 4 conditions. He raised his eyes, hope and fear mixed together. I brought him to the kitchen and poured us both ginger tea. First, I said, for 7 days here, not a single drop of alcohol. If you crave it, call me, or step into the yard for air, but don't hide. Second, You will send out resumes and look for work. Every expense, phone, gas, meals, you cover yourself. I won't stop you, but I won't pay. Third, you must contact a treatment center or a recovery group at least one session. Fourth, I held his gaze. Each night, you write down 3 things you did right that day. You don't have to show me. Just be honest with yourself. Tyler nodded, eyes red. I promise. I took a blank sheet and wrote the 4 conditions, then signed at the bottom. If you truly want to start over, sign it. This isn't a mom and son deal, it's an agreement between 2 adults. He signed with a shaky hand. When he set the pen down, tears fell on the paper's edge, blurring a small patch. I folded it and slipped it into a file, like laying a new foundation after a storm has torn the house apart. The next morning I was up early and found Tyler sitting on the porch, staring at the pale gray sky with a cup of black coffee in front of him. No smell of booze, just coffee and mist. "Did you send out resumes?" I asked. "I did. 2 places at building supply stores, 1 at an auto shop. They said they'll take a look." I nodded, no praise, no scolding. I set a sandwich and a glass of water on the table, breakfast for someone trying to fix himself. That evening he came home late. I heard dishes being washed, running water, light clinks, patient and quiet. I stepped into the doorway, about to speak, then didn't. I just asked, "What did you do right today?" He met my eyes and smiled a little. "I didn't drink." "That's enough," I said, smiling back. Day 2 passed gently. I worked in the yard and Tyler cleaned out the garage where beer cans and dried paint once piled up. He bagged trash, scrubbed the floor, hung my late husband's old tools, lining each one neatly. In the afternoon, Mrs. Gutierrez from next door brought over a warm apple loaf. "I hear your boy is back," she said, setting it on the counter. "Good for you. Sometimes the crack is where the light gets in." I poured tea and we sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the oaks. She told me, "My son was an addict too, Marion. I once thought he was lost for good, but 4 years now sober, back at work helping others. I know you're feeling afraid to hope because you've been disappointed too much." I looked at Tyler in the backyard, bent over picking up trash, tall, alone. I don't know how far he'll go, but for the first time in months, he's quiet, and the quiet isn't hostile anymore. Mrs. Gutierrez smiled softly. Silence is the first sound of change. On the 3rd night, under the warm yellow lights, I opened Frank's keepsake box. A photo of him grinning with a saw, a stopped old watch, a few letters he wrote me when we were young. In one letter, the line he used to say, "Discipline is love in its hard form. The one who teaches a child with discipline loves that child the most." My fingers trembled. Now I understood. Some love doesn't arrive as a hug, it arrives as a boundary, as the courage to say no at the right time. I folded the letter back into the box. No tears, just warmth, like Frank standing somewhere nearby, smiling. On the 4th morning, I woke to sounds in the kitchen. Tyler was cooking eggs, wearing an old apron, face clearer than I'd seen in a long time. "You're up?" he said, sounding relieved. "I've got good news." I sat, poured tea. "What is it?" "The building supply store by the gas station called. They want to interview me this afternoon, maybe start me on a trial shift. They need someone who can fix tools and organize the warehouse. I've done it before, so they're giving me a shot." I looked at him, said nothing at first. Then I nodded and smiled. "Good. That means you can start over." Tyler's eyes brightened, lips trembling like he was trying to hold on to belief. "I know, and I won't let you down again." I stood and set my hand on his shoulder. The hand that once shook with anger now felt light. "Don't promise. Just live each day the way you wrote in that agreement. When you keep your word to yourself, you won't have to fear letting anyone down." He nodded, eyes shining. In the afternoon, as he left, I watched from the window. A breeze carried the smell of coffee from the corner shop. Sunlight slanted gold across the yard. I sat in Frank's old rocker and opened my small notebook. In the bottom corner of the last page I wrote, "When someone breaks, don't rush to bury them. They might be learning how to mend." I closed the notebook and looked toward the road, where Tyler walked with his back straight, job papers in hand. For the first time in months, his stride didn't look heavy. It looked like a man beginning again for real. Inside me, no tears, just a gentle, spreading warmth. Hope. That morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains and laid a soft gold across the floor. I was making coffee when a motorcycle buzzed and cut off in the drive. Tyler came in with dust on his shirt, a little sun-browned, but his eyes were clear, the light I hadn't seen in years. "I got the job, Mom," he said, breathless and grinning. "The building supply store hired me full-time. Starting pay isn't much, but enough for a small room near work. I think it's time I stand on my own." I set my cup down, stunned for a few seconds. "Really? Really?" He nodded, handing me the new contract. Cheap paper, but I looked at it like a diploma from life. Tyler pulled a worn brown envelope from his pocket and placed it on the table. "I know I owe you too much, but I want to start paying you back, even if it's small." I opened it. $500, 5 crisp bills laid flat. "100 is room money for these past days," he said, "and 400 is the first repayment. And—" he pulled out a folded sheet, hands shaking as he handed it to me. "This is the repayment plan," I wrote. $400 a month, increasing as I get raises. You can check anytime." I held the paper and read each clumsy, crooked line, careful and sincere. At the bottom, under repayment plan, Tyler had signed, "Your son, Tyler Blake." I looked up at him. In an instant, every image returned. The blonde little boy with a toy truck, the teenager who'd promised, "I'll take care of you," the grown man who had kneeled in tears. All of them blending into one this time, standing on his own 2 feet. I set the envelope down, stepped forward, and hugged him. He went still, then hugged back, his hands shaking not from fear, but relief. I whispered, barely loud enough for us both, "You don't have to pay it all back, Tyler. Just don't repeat it." He gave a small smile and nodded, voice rough. "I get it. But you always said grown-ups take responsibility. I'm learning to be a grown-up now." That night we cooked our first dinner together, and maybe the last under the same roof, in the true sense. I made rice. Tyler marinated chicken, the same honey-grilled chicken he loved as a boy, only now my hands are more lined and his are calloused. The smell of roasting chicken filled the kitchen, blending with the simmering pot, the chop of the knife, and the light laughter of 2 people learning to begin again. I realized that after everything, motherhood hadn't vanished. It had just needed to be cleaned of anger and fear. Over dinner, Tyler talked about the new job, organizing materials, checking orders, sometimes lifting loads. "Not as exhausting as lying every day," he said with a smile between bites. I stayed quiet, watched him eat with a steady appetite, and felt something strange rise up. Pride, sadness, and peace together. "You know," I said, "the day you were born, I thought my job was to keep you safe forever. Turns out parenting is learning to let go without letting go." Tyler looked up, eyes serious and gentle. "I think you did both, Mom." Monday morning, the air was clear after a light night rain. Tyler's friend's pickup eased into the drive. His buddy Nate, tall, lean, kind face, hopped out to help load a few small boxes. Everything Tyler owned fit into 4 boxes: clothes, some tools, an old photo of me and Frank, and the watch I gave him at 18. Watching it, I felt both ache and ease. Neighbors gathered along the porch. Mrs. Gutierrez came over with a coffee. "Moving day?" she asked. "Yep," I smiled. "He found a room near work." She watched Tyler hoist a box into the truck and nodded. "Told you. A good son comes back, but next time, he'll return as a man." I smiled, eyes stinging a little. I hope so. She patted my shoulder. No need to hope, I can see it. The way he walks today, it's not running away, it's leaving the nest. I turned to my son. Tyler stood by the tailgate, said something to Nate, then waved back. I'll call every week, he said. And I'll send the money on time. Eat a real breakfast. Mom don't just drink coffee, I joked back. And you do your laundry. There's no invisible mother at that room. We both laughed. It drifted light on the breeze, no resentment, no guilt. As the truck rolled away, I stood watching for a long time. No tears, just a gentle, warm space like the breath you release after a storm. I went inside and locked the door behind me. The house was still, but not lonely. Everything as it should be. Tidy kitchen, shining table, the scent of grilled chicken still hanging faintly. I brewed a small pot of tea, poured it into a porcelain cup, and sat by the window. On the table lay Tyler's handwritten repayment plan. I read it again and paused at the last line. I can't pay back everything I took, but I will repay with time by living right. I smiled softly, brushing a finger over his messy signature. Maybe, sometimes, growing up isn't a fancy apology. It's a smudged sheet of paper and a small envelope of honest effort. Near dusk, I watered the flowers on the porch. The last light turned the yard honey gold. A mild breeze, damp earth, and roses in the air. Traffic hummed far off, and my heart felt as calm as a still lake. Mrs. Gutierrez came by again with a basket. "For you," she said. "Banana bread I just baked, best eaten when your mind has finally settled." I took it, smiling. "You always know exactly when I need something." She sat beside me, looking at the quiet porch. Strange, isn't it? When the kids leave, the house is emptier, but the heart is lighter. I nodded, sipped tea. Because we know this time they're leaving not to run, but to find their way. She looked at me kindly. "You did the right thing not rescuing, but teaching him to rescue himself." I chuckled softly and looked up at the peach-colored sky. Frank would be proud. I finally learned to love the way he taught disciplined, but kind. When the sun slipped away, I latched the gate and went inside. Warm air, golden light. I went upstairs, changed into pajamas, and pulled the curtains. On the table, the family photo still stood: Frank, me, and Tyler at his 10th birthday, grinning over the cake. I traced the glass and whispered, "I kept the promise, Frank. Our boy is standing on his own again." I turned off the light and lay down. No doors slamming, no heavy footsteps, no sighs through the wall, just the wind threading the roofline, as steady as breath. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through. No dreams, no jolts awake. Just the rare peace of a mother who finally learned that letting go doesn't mean losing your child, it means giving him the chance to find himself. 6 months have passed since Tyler left the nest. The house that once echoed with fights now holds only the tick of the clock and the light drift of coffee each morning. I slowed down and did the things I'd put off from exhaustion, changed the curtains, repainted the kitchen, planted a row of white roses along the porch. When the wind blows, the petals flutter as if someone is whispering, "It's okay now, Marion, it's okay." In the mornings, I usually head out to the garden early, trim the dead stems, spread fresh compost, and water with the old can Frank used. Sometimes, when the sun hits the spout just right, the light refracts into a tiny rainbow. I look at it and feel weightless, a piece I hadn't touched in years. Every Sunday, Tyler comes by, right on time, like clockwork. He drives a small pickup, stops at the gate, and taps the horn twice, our little signal. Each time, I open the door, already catching the smell of fresh bread from down the street. "I brought bread from the shop near my place," he says, lifting a still warm paper bag. "Baked this morning. Which kind do you want, Mom?" "Any kind you pick," I answer. And he always smiles. Tyler has changed a lot. not just in how he looks neater, healthier, but in how he talks, how he sees people. His eyes don't dodge or shrink anymore. He's become a man who knows when to feel ashamed and when to feel proud. Each month, Tyler sends $400 to $500 steady with a short text. Picked up some extra shifts this month, sending $500. He also includes a photo of his pay stub, not to show off, but to prove to himself he's keeping his word. I never demand anything. I just save those messages, month by month, like a ledger of my son's growing up. One fall afternoon, Tyler showed up with someone. A young woman with brown hair tied back, a beige sweater, and a gentle smile. "Mom," Tyler said, "this is Lena Brooks. She works at the bakery near me. She knows I owe you a lot, and she wanted to thank the person who taught me how to grow up." Lena offered her hand, her voice soft. "I've heard a lot about you. From Tyler. I just want to say, without you, I don't think he'd be standing here." I looked at her, no heavy makeup, clear eyes. Something about her made me trust her immediately. Not because she's pretty, but because her gaze looked exactly like mine at 20, when I still believed kindness never goes out of style. Dinner that day felt unusually warm. Lena helped set the table. Tyler did the dishes. When he finished, he whispered, "She's nothing like Crystal, right, Mom?" I smiled. "Don't compare. Just remember, someone who truly loves you won't ask you to tear your mother down to prove anything." He nodded, eyes deep and steady. A week later, I got a text from Crystal. I was wrong. "I want to talk. Will Tyler forgive me?" I read it and didn't reply. I wasn't angry anymore. There was nothing left to say. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Tyler, no comment. An hour later, my son wrote back. I said thank you, but no. "Thanks for staying silent, Mom." I cried when I read that. Not out of spite, but because someone who once knelt in weakness could now stand tall without me holding him up. At the end of the month, I went to attorney Avery Chen's office to update my will. Avery smiled when she saw me. "You look different than 6 months ago." "Maybe because I've learned what's worth keeping," I said. I asked to add a clause. Establish the Frank Blake Nursing Scholarship Fund for nursing students in hardship. Avery asked, "Are you sure?" "You could leave that money to Tyler." I smiled. "I don't need to leave him assets. I want to leave him a legacy he can be proud of. If Tyler lives right, that's the most valuable inheritance." Avery nodded, her eyes shining. "Frank is smiling somewhere, I'm sure." A few weeks later, my coworker friend Nora Patel invited me to join a support group for parents who'd been taken advantage of by their kids. I hesitated. I didn't want to reopen old wounds. But Nora said, "Not to complain, Marion, to show people still stuck in it that they're not alone." So I went. Small room, about 10 people every age. Some had their homes taken over, some had been drained to nothing. When it was my turn, I kept it short. My son once slapped labels on the fridge and tried to push me out of my own house. Today, that same son calls me Mom with a voice of a man who understands gratitude. The room went quiet, then filled with gentle applause. I didn't cry, but my heart warmed. For the first time, I told my story without shame, only freedom. One December evening, Texas went dark with a sudden outage. The whole block lost power. I dug up a few old candles and lit the kitchen. The flames danced on the walls, lighting up every corner cracks I'd patched, things I once feared to look at. I sat down, poured tea, and let the candlelight fall across Frank's photo. The house was so quiet I could hear the rain tapping the roof. In that moment I realized I'd gotten it all back, not the things, but my peace and my self-respect. I picked up my phone and texted Avery, "Thank you. Because of you, the door to life stayed open for both me and my son. That door doesn't just lead out, it leads back to our own hearts." Avery replied right away, "I only helped a little. You're the one who opened it, Marion." I set the phone down and smiled in the candlelight. The next morning, with sunlight cutting through the window, I got up early to prep Sunday lunch. In the pot was gumbo, Tyler's childhood favorite. I cooked slowly, stirred steadily, listening to the soft bubble while the radio played Frank's old jazz. I looked around the freshly painted kitchen, the clean curtains, the roses blooming on the porch. No more red labels on the fridge, no more orders barked at me, no more fear in my own home, just me and what I choose to keep: memory, kindness, and freedom. When the clock struck 11, I heard a car at the gate. Tyler right on time, as always. I wiped my hands and opened the door. My son stepped in, bringing the smell of wind and a warm smile. "Gumbo?" I could smell it from the corner. He grinned. I laughed. "Yep, where's the bread you promised?" He raised the bag. "Right here, your favorite." We set the table together. I looked at my son, calm eyes, straight shoulders, a real smile. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost him for good. Now I had my son back and a friend, a man who knows gratitude and how to love the right way. As I sat down, I said quietly to myself, "Frank, you see it, right? The house is peaceful again. Both of us made it back from the old ashes." I ladled Tyler the first bowl of gumbo, steam curling up in rich ribbons. Outside, the sun lit the white roses along the porch, round blooms, pure and fragrant. And in that moment I understood, happiness doesn't come from what we hold on to, but from what we dare to let go of so we can find ourselves again. Sunday lunch that day filled the house with voices for the first time in years. The oak table wore a white lace cloth, and the gumbo's scent lingered in the air. Tyler, Lena, Nora, and Mrs. Gutierrez, everyone was there, sharing a meal that seemed ordinary but held an entire journey of forgiveness. Lena helped plate dessert, Nora brought apple cider, and Tyler fumbled around looking for a place to stash the plastic containers. As I washed my hands, I teased, "Do you have any idea how much those containers once tortured me?" Tyler laughed, pulled a small roll of labels from his pocket, and tilted his head. "I do. That's why I came prepared." He stuck a label on a plastic container, neatly printed, "Mom, do not touch." The whole table burst out laughing. The sound cracked something heavy that had sat on this house for so long. Mrs. Gutierrez dabbed her eyes, laughing and crying at once. Now I believe in miracles, they just sometimes arrive 6 months late. The meal drifted along in warm stories. Tyler talked about his new job, extra shifts, and a possible promotion to oversee the warehouse. Lena said she's taking professional baking classes. Nora shared about new families in the support group. When the last cup of tea was poured, everyone fell quiet for a few seconds. I looked around each familiar face, each voice, each glance, and realized I'd walked through the hardest road and come back to the simplest thing: peace. I started talking not like a teacher, but a fellow traveler. I told them about those first labels on the fridge, the nights I heard them plot to push me out, and the moment I learned to be silent, not from fear, but to prepare a counter with truth. They listened. No one interrupted. I didn't blame or condemn. I just said, "Some lessons cost tears and betrayed trust. But that price teaches us what we must never lose: our dignity." Tyler, sitting beside me, lowered his head, then quietly slipped off an old ring, the leftover from a broken marriage. He set it down and replaced it with a small leather cord and a metal tag etched with the word respect. "Mom," he said, voice tight but clear, "I can't erase what I did, but I can wear this to remember I only got you back when I learned respect." I touched the little tag, my heart trembling like I could hear Frank whisper, "Discipline is love in its hard form." I stood, walked to the small cupboard, opened it, and took out the silver USB I'd hidden while gathering evidence. I handed it to Tyler, my hand steady now. "This is what you should understand," I said, "so you never repeat it. Inside is everything I recorded from the days you forgot who you were to the day I made a choice that let both of us survive." Tyler took it and held on tight. He spoke slowly, his voice going rough. "You saved me, by making me face it." No one spoke. I saw Lena's eyes fill, Nora nod softly, and Mrs. Gutierrez press a hand to her chest. Out on the porch, San Antonio sunlight poured over the mesquite trees, changing leaves. A warm breeze moved the kitchen curtains. I looked at the bright yard where white roses crowded the path. The house that once trapped my fear had become a witness to courage. Tyler helped clear the table. Lena washed dishes. Nora turned on the old jazz. I heard the soft drum brush blend with the wind, and in that moment I knew, my story isn't just about loss, it's about how a woman learned to stand tall in her own home. I closed my old notebook and smiled, murmuring to myself, "Wealth isn't in the house, it's in what we refuse to let be taken our dignity." When everyone left, Tyler came back to give me a long hug. "I'll bring bread next Sunday, okay? Label it carefully," I said, and we both laughed. When the door closed, I went back in and sat at the table. There was still a plastic container with the words, "Mom, do not touch," sitting in the bright kitchen. I didn't peel it off. I left it there as a reminder that we're only truly free when we protect what's ours without hurting anyone. I sat by the window, watched the sunset wash across the wall, and thought about the people hearing this story maybe far away, in a quiet home where they were made to believe they had no worth. I want them to know you can start again just once, say enough to whatever shrinks you. If you've listened this far, you probably know that feeling too. If this story touched you, tell me where you're watching from. Share the moment you once said, "Enough, I truly want to read it." And if you found a bit of strength in this journey, please hit like, subscribe, and come back for the next chapter. Thank you for staying to the very end. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person listening for people like me, people once pushed to the margins to feel a little less alone in our own lives. I turned off the lights and let the soft evening glow spill through the window. Outside, the San Antonio breeze moved again, brushing past the white roses, and I knew that this time it was moving through a house with dignity.